Halo 3 had one of, if not the best marketing for a video game ever. All of the trailers are so well put together and all deliver their own message, yet at the same time, all being connected to the theme of hope. Believe, Starry Night, and Hunted, all these trailers sold everyone on this game so easily. I personally not only remember the first time watching the Believe trailer, but to this day I consider it to be one of the best trailers I have ever watched. And that goes for all of media. Now, with everything leading up to it, like Halo 2's ending, the trailers, the Xbox 360, Halo turned out to be the most hyped Halo game ever, and one of the most hyped games ever. The tagline, "Finish the fight," was such an instant classic, everybody still remembers it to this day. Halo 3 would end up being the best-selling Halo game, and the best-selling Xbox exclusive to date. Bungie had a lot of pressure again to deliver with this game. Halo 3 was going to be the finale to the Halo trilogy. This doesn't just mean another sequel or an ending though. It had to be a thematic ending to the Halo trilogy in every way, not just the story. This time, however, Bungie had a good development in the power of the new Xbox 360. So how did the game turn out? Well, to start, this game looks absolutely beautiful. And I'm talking in standards with today. The art style just so easily flows together and the graphics don't look too bad either. But imagine it back then, bro. The leap between Halo 2 and 3 is just incredible. A lot of people were disappointed to not see Halo 3 Anniversary, but to be honest, this game still looks good and they can't just remaster every Halo game after 10 years. So if there were to be a line, then there would be a good case for it to be Halo 3. To start off with multiplayer, this game has a great game mode selection. Bungie obviously added a lot of new things, and I could go over every game mode, but I feel like a broken record talking about variety. Every game mode that has returned has been fine-tuned from the last two games, and everything new is just creative and well done. Also, the progression in this game, with ranks in the unlock system, is probably the best out of any Halo. The sandbox in this game is also really good. Bungie did a good job of integrating dual wielding into this game because it allowed for more weapons in the sandbox. The assault rifle made its return to be more mid-range and left the SMG to be close range. However, the SMG being weaker made it to be a dual-wield gun. Same with the battle rifle and Magnum. The dual-wieldable guns are smaller and weaker, but allowed for more combinations that can be just as, if not more deadly than a normal gun. It is really fun to experiment with these weapon combos to see what works and what doesn't. I could go over super in depth with why the sandbox is good, but trust me dude, it is just good. However, like Halo Reach, there's one factor that has a really big impact on the sandbox: projectiles. Now, what I mean by projectile is basically what comes out of the gun when you fire it. Most games use hit scan or projectile, where projectile means that the bullets are physical objects within the game, and hit scan is just the bullets that are scanned. Hit scan is basically a thing where shooting a gun will almost instantly have the bullets register at the target. Some games use a combination of the two, like for example, Battlefield uses hit scan for guns like pistols or assault rifles, and they use projectiles for guns like the sniper for balancing. However, Halo usually only picks one for all the bullet guns because of shields. However, Halo Combat Evolved already used projectiles in the game, and it wasn't too noticeable at all. So why am I bringing this up? Well, Halo 3's projectiles move noticeably slower to the point where you sometimes have to lead your shots. Now, this obviously isn't as controversial as Reach's Bloom, but it does make the game feel different. I personally really like it, and I think it sets Halo 3 apart, but there are some people who can't stand it. The vehicle selection in this game is also very fun. It is not the best, but it really stands out as one of the better throughout all the games. The Hornet, while not as good as the Falcon, is still really balanced and fun to use. The brute vehicles like the Prowler or the Chopper are very unique and cool. Also, the destruction in this game is probably the best in the series. It is just so artistic and satisfying. But yeah, the multiplayer is really good. It isn't too competitive or casual. It appeals to everyone, and that, at the end of the day, is the point. The sandbox allows for some really awesome moments that only happen in Halo 3. The skill gap is very flexible to everyone, and there isn't a lot of jumps within it. There's no button combos or, stuff that just makes it inaccessible to new players. I always have a blast when playing multiplayer, and I think that BTB is in this game is probably the best in the series. So yeah, overall, good multiplayer. Bungie, formerly being a development team fueled by the community that has risen above them, decided to really give tools to those players. Forge now allowed for more interaction with the maps, and later down the line allowed for players to create entirely new maps and game modes. It isn't the best Forge, but like Reach, it had a community filled with passion. With Red vs. Blue and other machinimas rising, Bungie also added a theater mode, which allowed you to revisit your gameplays with an infinite amount of nuke angles. They didn't have to add these things, but they really did show the spirit of Bungie back then. With Forge, custom games would take an entirely new identity. Halo 2 and 1 do have some really good custom games, but the possibilities were nothing compared to what was now possible with Halo 3 and onwards. Halo 3's multiplayer is always remembered by many to be the peak of Halo and Xbox Live. Almost everybody who owned an Xbox had a story to tell with Halo 3's multiplayer, and its impact on everybody who played it and the ones who just heard about it is undeniable. It is really just something inspiring. Now obviously, because of Bungie's rough development with Halo 2, they had to split the story in half. Except I lied. Now, I don't know what the original Halo 2 script was and what the outline looked like, but assuming it was just Halo 3 afterwards, it seems more like they only cut 1/4 of the story. However, this was the ending to the story as Bungie wanted it, so they had to make sure it was good. So how did the campaign turn out? Well, before I get into the story, I obviously have to talk about the levels. Halo 3's campaign has some of the highest highs throughout all the games in terms of level design. However, it isn't a consistent package. For one, the campaign is very short, only featuring like 9 levels, and of those 9 levels, all of them can be beaten in like 10 minutes. Obviously, this is good because now there's a lot of room for focus, but even then, there are some hiccups. The level's Crow's Nest is pretty bland in comparison to other levels. Cortana is fine, but really suffers from these game-stopping little cutscene things. These are littered throughout the campaign, but really affect Cortana as a level because of how many they put in this specific level. However, Halo 3 still has a damn good campaign. The level design always allows for creativity and thinking throughout. There is little fat that slows down the campaign when playing. It is filled with so many epic moments that just keep you going. As much as I am annoyed by some of these issues, the campaign never has me bored. The sandbox really works well in the campaign. It is a blast to shoot the weapons and use the equipment against the enemies, which the enemies are also very well designed. I will say the replacement of elites with brutes can be noticeable at times, but I think it worked for the better. Brutes now have less health, but with shields that break forever if cracked. Grunts, jackals, drones, all these other enemies are all consistent and fun to shoot. Flood now have a pure form, which can turn into 3 different forms, which are all cool. Halo 3 also added boss fights that are more in line with Halo and what it should strive to do. Scarabs are just so fun to fight, and it is always so satisfying to destroy them. Weapon and enemy design in the campaign is just nothing but quality. The story starts off with the Prophet of Truth's Forerunner ship entering Earth's atmosphere. But before anything else happens, Master Chief jumps out of the ship to land in a jungle. While this is happening, we actually get a really well-made Cortana monologue that really does a good job of highlighting the theme of this game. A while later, the UNSC detects a fall and sends Sergeant Johnson and the Arbiter to go and rescue Master Chief. They eventually find him to have his suit locked from the fall, and Johnson orders the Marines to go pick up his body. As Johnson turns away, Chief gets up and tells Johnson that he left Cortana behind. However, Chief notices Arbiter in camouflage and goes after him, only to be stopped by Johnson. Arbiter's left unfazed, but they go on their way to regroup. They fight through the Covenant forces throughout the jungle and eventually get picked up by a friendly Pelican. So far, we're seeing everything that we want to see from this campaign. The Pelican arrives to Crow's Nest, a base that the UNSC is using, and the squad meets up with Miranda Keyes. They contact Lord Hood, and he explains the plan to end the war. They finally learned of the reason why the Covenant came to Earth, and that was because of the Ark. As explained in Halo 2, the control center for all the Halo rings. Lord Hood plans to take down Truth's anti-air defenses and blow the Covenant off Earth. However, before he can continue, the Prophet of Truth interrupts the transmission and does a generic bad guy speech that essentially just says that the humans will not survive. Then, the base gets attacked and Miranda Keyes tells the troops that the rally point is war. Now, this is the point where you realize that Halo 3's writing is just not as good as Halo 2. First of all, why is Miranda being so arrogant? She was never supposed to be cocky, she was just confident in herself. That to war line is just so stupid and unnecessary. Like, come on, she has more respect than this. And the biggest insult to me was the truth video transmission thing. Like, what the hell? Even for a dumb comedic villain, warning your enemies about your power is a waste of time. But for someone as smart and manipulative as Truth to be pulling this is just insulting. Where the hell did the writing go wrong? Truth from Halo 2 is one of my favorite characters ever. Truth from Halo 3 is not. To be honest, Truth here does kind of work as a villain, but not as Truth. This type of change is just insulting and I am not happy. It's like they forgot to play Halo 2 before making this game. So anyway, Master Chief and the Arbiter fight to protect Crow's Nest and rally the troops out of the base. However, once they realize that the capture of the base is inevitable, Miranda orders the bomb to be planted to destroy the base. Arbiter and Johnson leave the base, but the bomb is deactivated, so Chief is ordered to activate the bomb and stay behind. Him and a few Marines hide under the base and prepare for the explosion. Chief and a few Marines recover from the blast and make their way out of the base. They eventually regroup with the other UNSC forces and raid the anti-air device that Truth set up near the Ark. Chief, Arbiter, and a number of Marines raid the hill and destroy the anti-air device.
All ships, fire at will.
This is the way the world ends.
What did Truth just do? Did he activate the rings?
No, sir. But he certainly did something.
Evac wounded and regroup. Wherever Truth went. Sir, new contact slipping in.
What is it? More brutes?
Worse.
Master Chief and the Arbiter go to figure out that yes indeed, the Flood came to Earth. They fight their way to the ship that the Flood came from, and along the way they get help from Half-Jaw's ship, the Shadow of Intent. Epic moments like this, dude. Master Chief goes ahead into the Covenant ship to find a message that appears to be from Cortana. However, as he is figuring it out, 343 Guilty Spark shows up and takes the message after bantering a bit with Chief. This is the first time they've seen each other since the Pillar of Autumn in Halo 1. The entire crew meets up in the Shadow of Intent's meeting room. They all go back and forth until they get around to Chief. He says that they have to go into the slip space portal that Truth created because he trusts Cortana's message. Lord Hood, with little options left, decides to go through with it and agrees to send all he has to go with Chief. The Shadow of Intent then goes into the slip space portal.
Brute ships, staggered line. Shipmaster, they outnumber us 3-1.
Then it is an even fight.
All cruisers fire at will. Burn their mongrel hides.
Truth's ship isn't taking part in the attack. He must have gone to ground.
Roger that, ma'am. We're on him. Kick the door. Hocus?
She's a little crook, Sergeant Major. But she'll hold.
All right, pop the hatch.
Master Chief then fights through a number of Covenant forces until he finally gets to the anti-air wraiths. He takes them out, so Frigate Forward and Dawn can land on the Ark. Just epic, dude. Now with more resources, he and a number of UNSC forces are able to push the Ark's interior and take control of it. However, before they blast the door down, 343 Guilty Spark stops them and handles it by himself. They get to a map of the Ark to find out where Truth is. 343 Guilty Spark tells Chief and the Arbiter that the Ark was made to create the Halo rings and send them to their specific locations. They find Truth in the Ark's command center where he can activate the rings, so they hurry to go get him. The UNSC sends Pelicans and Phantoms to go after Truth. They find Truth to be fortified under a shield powered by 3 different towers, so they send forces after each one of them. Chief and Arbiter successfully deactivate their towers, but Johnson's tower never powers down. They unite and go after the 3rd tower and deactivate it. However, a flood-infested High Charity slips spaces in and sends flood units all over the Ark. Master Chief and Arbiter then get ordered to go after Truth before the flood, so that is exactly what they do. Truth does everything to keep them out, but they get past the forces and go in.
Though our enemies crowd around us, we tread the blessed path. In a moment I will light the rings, and all who believe shall be saved.
Chief, how close are you?
Not close enough.
That the best you got? Oh, come on. Impress me. Stop! You imbecile! He wants you to kill him. I'd prefer that you did not. What's the matter, big shot? Can't start your own party? I admit, I need your help. But that secret dies with all the rest.
Johnson! Sound off!
Get out of here!
Not without you.
You delay the inevitable. One of you will light the rings. You cannot hope to kill them all.
You're right.
Do it. Me, and you. Now! No! Your forefathers wisely set aside their compassion, steeled themselves for what needed to be done. I see now why they left you behind. You were weak, and gods must be strong.
not shoot, but listen. Let me lead you safely to our foe. Only you can halt what he has set in motion.
Stop the rings. Save the rest. Can you see, Arbiter? The moment of salvation is at hand.
It will not last.
Your kind never believed in the promise of the sacred ring.
Lies for the weak, beacons for the deluded.
I will have my revenge. On a prophet, not a plague.
My feet tread the path. I shall become a god.
You will be food, nothing more.
No! I am truth, the voice of the covenant.
Shadow, you must be silenced.
Headstones pushed aside. Corpses shift and offer room. A fate you must abide.
We trade one villain for another.
This cutscene is obviously very important to the Halo series. This is the end of the Covenant. Yet, in many ways, it falls short to me. And before I get into why, I will say that I think the scene was well done within the context of Halo 3 by itself. But the reason this falls short to me is to get the most obvious out of the way, Truth's character being wrong, but also how the story handled it. This is pretty much the first time we see Truth interacting and doing something in Halo 3. And the way he just dies, and immediately after the Gravemind presents himself as the main villain, is just like really bad to me. Like, for me, dude, Halo has always been about Covenant versus humanity, not Flood versus everything. Gravemind never struck to me as a villain. In Halo 2, he was more of like a collection of information with the will bended towards the spread of the Flood. Like, the spread of the Flood was the only thing he knew. He was called evil by other beings because of what had to happen in order for the Flood to spread, but he never acted like a villain. Truth and the Brutes were so much better as villains for the elites and UNSC because that conflict was so fleshed out and made with connections. As cool as this scene is, I can never stop thinking about what could have been. Master Chief and the Arbiter escape the Flood. As they settle, Chief starts to have visions of Cortana that guide him to a door. He opens it and it is revealed that a replacement ring for the one that got destroyed in the first game is being built. Knowing of the dangers of the Flood, Master Chief plans to light the ring prematurely to blow it up with the Flood. However, he realizes that he needs an index, and he remembers that Cortana still has the index from Installation 04 within her. Chief and Arbiter go to High Charity, or whatever's left of it, to retrieve Cortana. Master Chief and Arbiter finally arrive to the ruins of High Charity and to find it completely infested by the Flood. Chief goes in and Arbiter stays with the Pelican. Chief fights through a monstrous amount of Flood before finally getting to Cortana.
You found me. But so much of me is wrong. Out of place. You might be too late.
You know me. When I make a promise.
You keep it. I do know how to pick 'em.
Lucky me. Do you still have it?
The activation index from the first Halo ring. A little souvenir I hung on to, just in case. Got an escape plan?
Thought I'd try shooting my way out. Mix things up a little.
Just keep your head down. There's 2 of us in here now.
Chief escapes with Cortana and meets up with Arbiter in the Pelican. They escape and come into contact with their army. Chief tells them the plan, and they go to the Halo ring to finally light it. Chief and Arbiter land on the ring and fight through a number of Flood. They meet up with Johnson and Guilty Spark before going in to the control room. Johnson starts working on firing the ring, but Guilty Spark disapproves of the premature fire of the ring, so he shoots Johnson in the back, leaving him neutralized. Chief takes Johnson's laser and kills Guilty Spark.
I'm getting you out of here.
No, you're not. No, don't let her go. Don't ever let her go. Send me out with a bang.
Chief, I'm so sorry.
This scene I actually like. The writing in this game didn't affect all the characters. I'll touch more on Arbiter later, but Cortana, Johnson, and Chief all stayed consistent in this game. This death scene really does suit Johnson in a way. Even though the way he died was kinda dumb, not all deaths have to be super thematic or eye-opening. This death is the right combination of sudden but also fitting, as in how Johnson reacts to his inevitable death. And we get this nice scene, so good job, Bungie. Master Chief and Arbiter then start running and fight through both Flood and Sentinels before getting to Johnson's Warthog. And then we get possibly the most epic sequence in all of gaming, the Halo 3 Warthog run. Every time I play this, I just get hooked and caught up in the adventure of Halo. Even though I saw a lot more of the cracks this time around, I still loved this section. Chief and the Arbiter aim their direction towards the pillar bottom and floor it to launch themselves into the hangar bay.
Hang on!
Chief!
If we don't make it,
We'll make it.
it's been an honor serving with you, John.
For us, the storm has passed. The war is over. But let us never forget those who journeyed into the howling dark and did not return. For their decision required courage beyond measure, sacrifice, and unshakable conviction that their fight, our fight, was elsewhere. As we start to rebuild, this hillside will remain barren, a memorial to heroes fallen. They ennobled all of us, and they shall not be forgotten.
Reset! Up!
I remember how this war started, what your kind did to mine. I can't forgive you. But you have my thanks for standing by him to the end. Hard to believe he's dead.
Were it so easy. Things look different without the Prophet's lies clouding my vision. I would like to see our own world, to know that it is safe. Fear not, for we have made it so. By your word, Opportunity. Take us home.
This memorial scene has always been one of my favorites, although maybe a little bit too small in scale for this type of scene. All in all, Halo 3's story wasn't bad by any means. I just think it falls short in many ways, but it still captures the spirit of Halo. It will make you feel something in the end. So, one of my biggest problems with this story is the length. Now, the runtime isn't actually that short, but the in-universe time is pretty short. I think this story really is too connected to Halo 2 in the sense that it is just the ending that would have been for Halo 2. And even though that isn't true, the game spends no time setting anything up and goes straight into finishing the fight. It is like a straight up continuation of Halo 2. The first mission is really good with grounding the characters, but then by the end of it, the heroes are already planning to end Truth once and for all. And then it doesn't work, so they follow Truth and plan to finish the fight again. Even if the story had good writing, this plot would still be kind of awkward. This is like if Avengers Endgame just had the movie end when the Avengers went to kill Thanos in the first 10 minutes. This is not how you make a trilogy game. There has to be something more than just finishing the fight. Now, in order to make a good trilogy after a cliffhanger ending, you have to recognize that this trilogy story has to be its own story. These are basic writing principles. If your story is too long, then you have to make it too long. You can't just split it up into two parts. Each story has to have its own identity. A good way to do this is to make sure the characters reflect on themselves and what they represent, like another arc for them. Make them find out more about themselves. Return of the Jedi didn't just have the rebels clap back immediately on the Empire. They had Luke go on and learn the true ways of a Jedi. Avengers Endgame had the guys live 5 years before they were ready to start going. And then, on their actual adventure, they went back in time and found things out about themselves that they didn't know. There are many more that I can think of, but that doesn't matter. How could have Halo 3 been a good trilogy? Well, there are 2 ways to do this. Assume that the writing would have just been more in line with Halo 2, or that the writing would have been just like what we got. I'm gonna do what would have been best, but with realistic standards. To start, make the situation that the good guys are in more dangerous and hopeless, to allow for more. The trailers all sent the message of hope, but it's not like humanity was about to die at the end of Halo 2. Make it so truth had a higher advantage. Step 2, make the characters really reflect on the arc they had. More specifically, Chief and the Arbiter. Make more missions that don't have to do with finishing the fight. Explore the universe of Halo while also fleshing out the characters. Make us find things out about them that we didn't know before, that would make sense for their arc to be ending. There was apparently a cut level of Halo 3 that had to explore Guardian Forest, and while this probably wasn't a reflecting section that I'm talking about, it's exactly the kind of level that should have been expanded upon. And step 3, I didn't want to have to do this, but yeah, focus on the overall purpose of the other games. And the biggest meaning of this is to focus on the Covenant. And in line, keep Truth's character. Having a scene with him and the Arbiter to show us what their relationship is truly meant, now that they are truly enemies, show us how Truth saw Chief. But yeah, there's a lot more I could say, but this story could have been way better, dude. Like, seriously. Now, I don't think the writing in this game is good. It's just okay. But what is good writing? Well, it is a very in-depth and complicated idea, but basically it is the depth of the ideas presented while also being consistent within the context, whether that has to do with character, theme, or plot. Also, good pacing, structure, and development. Halo 3 does not reach high levels of writing. For example, Miranda Keyes basically being the second in command of an entire galactic army, being the UNSC, it doesn't make sense for her battle tactics to be as bad as just saying that your troops should go to war. Truth, coming to power by using his intelligence and manipulative abilities, it wouldn't make sense for him to literally send death threats to his enemies in order to provoke fear. These are inconsistencies with both character and in-universe logic. Also, there are very basic arcs in this story, but nothing too special. Most of what happens in this story is just plot progression, and that's probably the biggest problem with this story. But yeah, it's incredibly disappointing that Bungie went from giving us Halo 2 story to giving us Halo 3 story. Now guys, it's time for my other biggest problem with the game. The usage of Arbiter. Arbiter from Halo 2 is like my top 3 characters of any story ever. And here, he got revoked to just being a sidekick. Now, he does have an arc, minor arc in this game, but it's mostly through in-game dialogue, which is just insulting. This game kind of goes back to like what I talked about before, but there should have been more Arbiter missions, dude. He had a great arc in Halo 2, but there was still more they could have done in Halo 3. How would he react to now being an icon to the elites? How would he go up against Truth? There's just no reason Arbiter should have been mistreated like this. I hate it. They didn't have to do this to my boy. The story is still good though. The game is filled with a lot of callbacks to the Halo series and epic moments that will get your blood pumping. There's a lot to appreciate here, and the story captures the feeling of a Halo game. It was disappointing to me, but most people think this is peak Halo, and I can definitely see why. But I will never forget what could have been. Halo 3 is always said to be the best Halo game and one of the greatest shooters of all time. Its impact is just insane with it, like impacting so many people. Bungie just put so much love into this package and it shows. The gameplay is a bit controversial to a minority, but really is one of the most complete and balanced experiences throughout all the games. The multiplayer is very fun to play and always has some epic moments. It was very popular back then, only being outgrown by Modern Warfare. The new Forge mode turned out to be very influential in this community of passionate players, and the campaign turned out to be one of the most beloved of all time. Good job, Halo 3. I give Halo 3 an 8 out of 10. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.
Chief? Can you hear me? I thought I'd lost you too.
What happened?
I'm not sure. When Halo fired, it shook itself to pieces. Did a number on the Ark. The portal couldn't sustain itself. We made it through just as it collapsed. Oh, some of us made it. But you did it. Truth and the Covenant, the Flood, it's finished.
It's finished.
I'll drop a beacon, but it'll be a while before anyone finds us. Years, even. I'll miss you.
Wake me when you need me.